Hello, welcome to SHOWstudio. We're here to talk about Haider Ackermann today, so let's crack on with the introductions. Starting on my left, Tom.
Hi, I'm Thomas Cohen and I'm a musician.
Hi, I'm Levi Palmer and I'm a designer.
Hi, I'm Matthew Harding. I'm a designer together with Palmer Harding.
And I'm Lara Johnson-Wheeler. I'm features editor at SHOWstudio.
Fantastic. We've got a design duo with us today, which is great.
Ooh la la.
Before we get into Haider, I kind of wanted to talk a bit about some of the other Paris shows, just to kind of contextualize it a bit. I kind of noticed with brands like Off-White, Y Project, a lot of the other kind of younger brands that are in Paris kind of clogging up the Vogue runway feed. There's a kind of very identical look that seems to be emerging. A lot of kind of twisted to the side shirts, you know, a lot of, I just see a very, very similar look.
I haven't seen very much glamour in menswear this season.
Right.
It's all techy and stiff.
Mm-hmm. But I would say, like, I mean, just because from a fashion perspective, going out to Paris for our showrooms whenever we do that, I always see my view of Paris is that they're very much, when there's a trend, they all embrace it.
Right.
So I think the whole Vetements thing is still like going strong. So whatever Demna does, Paris does, even if it's not.
Well, those younger ones anyway.
Yeah, especially with the younger ones. Even if it's not intentional, it's like, oops, I've done big shoulders.
Like, yeah, you got the big shoulders.
Big shoulders,
High
there's
trousers.
so many football scarves. Everyone seems to be totally obsessed with making a football.
Which wasn't that like when he did Balenciaga with the Bernie Sanders one?
Yeah,
That
but
was
it was also
taken.
something that like Gosha Rubchinski did a lot of, and it just looks very samey to me, which is, I guess, kind of something quite nice to set Haider against. Haider's always been very specific. His customer is like very clearly laid out.
But maybe it's also been something that, as a brand we go through as well, it's like these are all brands that are kind of been going for a couple of years, but have recently had quite a big jump of success, and maybe they're trying to kind of formalize it and kind of like, how do I continue that success? And so maybe they're resting on a little bit of their laurels rather than pushing forward and kind of looking at what everyone else is buying rather than thinking about what to do for themselves next, I guess.
One that we were just talking about before we got started was Palomo, which is slightly outside of this look, kind of women's wear on men. Very glamorous. Yeah. Heel for men. Velvet. What's everyone's take on Palomo if they're familiar?
It's the only menswear, I know a lot of it is very feminine, but just those classic things that I look for, like a flare or a trench coat or, you know.
Edwardian sleeves.
Exactly.
Blouse.
I mean, I did that blouse, that's like Henry VIII. The Edwardians were like,
Oh, forgive me, yeah, you're right.
But I love it. It's obnoxious and it's kind of gross in all the nice ways to me. But his references on this show is just it's like 30s hunting wear.
A lot of it's a little too literal for me. Like it's good to have references, but when it's kind of just let's do this in a fabric we've developed or whatever, it's a little lazy to me. And I can see the value in a lot of it, but then maybe in my taste it goes a little too on the feminine side. But so many menswear is so hyper masculine or just basic clothes and new fabrics.
Yeah.
And there's very few designers, Haider being one of them, I think, who actually bridge that masculine feminine kind of.
It's one of the things that Matthew and I, as a business, we just started paying ourselves a year ago, so money's like new for us, really new. And
Congratulations! Wow.
Like when we started buying clothes again, I've always been a huge fan of Gaultier menswear, especially growing up.
Me too.
And I thought actually the past maybe 2 years would be the best time for Gaultier to do menswear again.
Right.
It's like this was stuff that Gaultier and West would have been showing in like 82 to 87. That would be really directional and new, and the first time someone would approach that. But I think what Gaultier always had with his menswear was that nod to masculinity and like the sailor and the or the military and those hyper masculine like Tom Finn-esque visuals, but with a reference to subverted femininity. And so it made it easy to take the pieces apart and put it into your daily wardrobe. I've not personally seen Palomo's stuff in a shop, so it might be similar, because I would never wear I have worn head-to-toe Gaultier looks, but as a non-fashion student now, I don't think I'd wear a designer head-to-toe. And so I like to be able, this piece here with the trench coat, even the shirt, like everything in there, like I could see pulling apart and wearing individually, and it having its own unique flair.
Well, let's segue into Haider, our topic of discussion today. I guess on that kind of note of masculinity and femininity, one thing I think I've always noticed about Haider is this kind of paradox between kind of, revealing the body and covering up. He'll do like a full look with a coat, but you'll still have a completely bare chest or something like that. And I've always quite enjoyed that, that neat balance he kind of strikes there. The show's happened, so we're kind of able to just have a look at some of the looks and start pulling them apart. What's everyone's take? Maybe you're going to pick on you now.
Yeah, I do. Fine. I think on first notice, I thought that it was interesting that Haider's silhouette seems to have expanded a bit more. I think that those quite sort of tight cropped trousers seem to have loosened up a bit. And then, as you continue, perhaps, the silhouettes change. I think when I first started looking at Haider, all of those really intensely dropped crotches.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm quite happy not to be seeing that so much anymore.
I mean, that's something I love a lot of Haider's stuff, but drop crotches and dress shoes without socks.
And as we were saying, the bare
pet peeve.
The barefoot.
I'm glad I wore socks today.
I can't stand. I mean, it's an Italian kind of bourgeois kind of guy who wears dress shoes without socks. I just
I don't mind dress shoes without socks as long as you're actually not wearing socks. It's those little fake socks.
Oh, the fake socks are the worst. Once you get a little hint of that fake sock, you're just like, what are you doing?
Like, go all the way, commit to it.
Commit to it, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's funny we talk about like off-white and white projects and things like that. I think some of the newness from Haider this season seems to be that he's kind of trying to show on some of these looks his take on sportswear, which is kind of then again a little disappointing that it's kind of like what's the trend of the season, or not of the season, but like of the moment maybe, rather than embracing who he is himself and kind of developing that further, which he does do in some of these looks. But some of the earlier looks, I think.
Well, there's one thing that stood out to me was there's like a hoodie with a printed, with a piece of text printed on it. And I just thought, no, it's infected everyone.
Yeah, like this one right here, this blue look with the stripes. In terms of the sportswear aspect, is I've always thought of Haider as like, what would I want to wear if I was going black carpet or red carpet? Black carpet. Black carpet. It's a new thing, and or black tie. But then I've seen this season and last season, maybe this is his influence from Berluti, is this more casual approach, and I don't really think of Haider if I'm going to spend £800 on a pair of washed chinos, even if it's in his nice silhouette. Like, I want something that feels a little bit more luxe.
Like that look there, what numbers? I don't know what number that is, and the one on the right, the screen. Like that's very like that doesn't look like a Haider show to me. That looks like it's very kind of that streetwear.
The guy.
Kind of, it just doesn't.
I mean, I don't expect
text
from.
Yeah.
What do you think it says?
Depp.
Well, we were talking about the kind of the Haider man, and that certainly had a bit of an evolution. He kind of gave some looks away first at Pitti and then kind of took a little bit of a break and said, you know, that he'd really start showing men's when it was ready, which I really respected. And has been doing men's, you know, it's not his kind of staple, but now that he's at Berluti, that's, you know, very much the direction he's heading in.
Maybe it is the Berluti influence, but I think this feels less Johnny Depp than perhaps
completely.
before. And, you know, that all of that big layering and the
Swashbuckling.
swashbuckling. I don't see swashbucklers so much here. It feels a little cleaner.
Yeah.
Oh, completely.
And you can see so much more
Less
of the detail.
dirty.
Yeah.
Like, there was a hoodie I really liked, but it was like £900, so I was like, that's not going to happen. But it was really, really beautiful. The sizing was humongous. Like, the sleeves were way too long, and I'm quite a long person. But there's just something about it that also felt a bit worn. That, I don't know, for the price, it just didn't feel so nice. But this looks a bit cleaner colours, I think. Like, for a while, a lot of his coloration was quite like muddy, I guess.
I think there's previous seasons where the palette's kind of verging on pastel, but kind of dirty pastel. It feels like kind of modern dandy rolled around in mud a bit. But this doesn't at all. This feels very, very different. And I think, I don't know, it feels more grown up. I think people say that a lot when, you know, more designers show, but it does. And yeah, you can see even in these details, previously the styling was so much, there was so much thrown on top that perhaps you wouldn't have noticed these, and I think they come through a lot more.
Should we have a look at some of the earlier shows as well, just to
Quickly on
go on.
Show, just going through all the looks, I can only really respond to stuff either sort of emotionally or historically. And looking at
Quite the manifesto.
looking at the references, or like breaking it down, what I can see is pajamas. There's so many pajama references here, like the kimonos and
There's one
the
look
fabrics.
Yeah.
There's one look that's like
jacket on
But his
top.
previous
with the jacket
collection
on top,
seemed so much, I thought that before,
Yeah.
a lot of kind of rumpled pajama stuff, but this feels just a bit more like grown up.
But he's always
Traveling, it feels like, you know, traveling wear.
But that's
like
the Johnny
someone
Depp
who's taking
feel,
a
isn't it?
fancy
Of like,
holiday.
oh, he's just got out of bed look.
Yeah.
I think it's more opium den look.
Yeah.
there we go.
Which
Maybe
is-
lounging
yeah.
rather than sleeping.
Yeah, loungewear. It's, you know, it's
Loungewear, little hats, and sort of tailoring.
Yeah.
yeah, dark wood, library, that sort of thing, smoking room.
Do you like the little hats?
I don't even really notice them. I think kimonos should, or dressing gowns are just like, it's impossible to style them anyway. So it's a strange piece to make.
He's been trying for a very long time with the kimono to
Make it happen.
Yeah, he's a
style it vigorously.
Finn, do you like this cowboy reference here?
Well, I do. I was going to say, I mean, me and Tom probably both love a Western shirt.
Have a Western shirt, yeah.
And I love those colours. Those are really classic. But
I mean, having grown
suppose
up in Texas, I would never touch Western wear.
Oh,
Because
really?
for me, it's too literal. It'd be like a Scottish person wearing a Western
kilt.
kilt.
I love wearing a kilt, and I'm Scottish.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I mean, we were talking a little bit, to go completely off topic, we were talking a bit about that Moschino show with cowboys, and any cowboy reference is great to me. Anything Western.
This is very pajama.
Number 20.
Yeah, that is absolute 40s, World War II, English pajamas.
Colors might be too bright.
Yeah, they've changed the colour and they've changed detail.
A lot of the detailing is really nice, though. Like there's in the earlier pieces, like the print on one side of the lapel and like the double layers on the jackets and things like that. There's lots of really subtle, like nice. I think in stores when you break it down, there's a lot to get your teeth into. I mean, I personally wouldn't start it all together, but I think there's not many brands that you would these days.
And there's always been this kind of, talking about kimonos, there's always been this kind of influence of these, seeing a lot of kind of bamboo and lilies and pieces like that. Haider's sort of always been inspired by travel, and I think that is what kind of reinforces this loungy kind of look. But in a kind of era of hypersensitivity around, what belongs where and appropriation. Is it still cool?
Well, I mean, for me, I think first of all, he's a multicultural person, so it's part of his DNA. I think we're such a global society now that to not have reference to, because to me that none of this, yes, there's a kimono in it, but it's not sending it down the runway in the same way that Galliano sent down Kabuki girls.
Right.
And also, he's reworking the same thing every season. It's something that's obviously a genuine part of himself. It's something that he's really interested in finding the right way of expressing. It's not like this season it's kimonos, next season it's Navajo. And
again, I would say like for me the print reference is more like what is the wallpaper in that opium den.
Yes.
And like people talk about like hypersensitivity of appropriation in fashion a lot, but then if I had a chinois sort of wallpaper, is that appropriation? Like where does it go in? Like in what aspect does that appropriation stop? So I think it's for me I don't see it. I think it's just referencing something that he thinks is beautiful, and he does have a very multicultural cast, which is at least shows him that he's authentic about diversity and about globalism.
It's more, I think that authenticity is an important part. Like he's authentically interested in what he's presenting, whether you like it or not. I think the topic of appropriation, I think, is more, for me anyway, it's more when people are doing it at a very surface level, when it's like, that's going to be a trend, or I can make some quick money off doing a whatever theme. Whereas I think when it's something that's deeply rooted in you, and it's something you're generally interested in, you're exploring it, I think there's a lot more respect there. I'm sure there'll be people who disagree that it's like a no-go area anyway, but I think it's I think for me it's that authenticity of how much you commit to a subject, I guess, rather than just a throwaway thing.
Talking about Jean-Paul Gaultier earlier, our favourite show.
One of my absolute favourite shows is the Rabbi Chic collection, and obviously that got him in a lot of hot water at the time, and imagining him coming out with that kind of now would just be like, oh my god.
But I don't think this feels problematic.
No.
It feels respectful. It doesn't feel like that.
I think that within the respectfulness is kind of hard to kind of place in fashion. I think it's more the authenticity, isn't it? There's authenticity in some of those shows. To me, there's huge authenticity in that Jean-Paul Gaultier show, and absolutely with what he's doing, it's very respectful.
I think that's put that question neatly to bed then. Perfect. I wanted to talk a bit about luxury. I was reading a piece that Eugene Rabkin was doing an interview with Haider Ackermann. If you don't read all of Eugene's pieces religiously, I highly recommend you do. He's one of the few fashion journalists that speaks any sense. He's fantastic. But he said there's a certain honesty in proclaiming that fashion is luxury and leaving it at that, talking about Haider's clothes. I suppose having looked at some of the other shows in Paris and knowing that kind of athletic wear is the kind of biggest growing market in fashion, it's what people are buying the most of. And obviously this is a bit of a change, but Haider's been someone who's quite keen on the idea of just fashion as luxury and presenting luxury clothes for men. Certainly Berluti is part of that story. Is fashion just luxury? I'm going to ask you.
Well, I think the reason that this feels more honest is that this does feel luxurious. And I think if you compare this show to previous shows, things that we've looked at like Off-White and Y Project, they look like they perhaps should be cheaper. And the fabrics, the textures, the details, they do look luxurious. And I think with the Berluti influence, what Haider's doing looks a little more luxurious, like we said, less dirty. Perhaps it's responding to that. And I don't think that everyone's doing that, and I think that's why this is interesting. I don't think fashion necessarily is luxury, always, but I think people should be aware that that's what they're selling.
For me, I think it depends how you define luxury. But I think luxury is something that's actually is a personal experience. I think the kid who's going to be buying like a Y Products jumper, like maybe it's half the price of a Haider Ackermann jumper, but there's going to be an experience there. There's going to be an experience there that is luxury to them and is how they treat themselves. And to me, I think people get confused between luxury and preciousness. I think Haider's pieces, like there's a really gorgeous, that printed one, really gorgeous. It was like, what, £1,400? And like, it was the perfect thing for Levi. But it was like ridiculously expensive that if you bought it, it'd be so precious that you'd wear it like once every 2 years because it was just so precious you couldn't risk damaging it. And to me, like the experience there isn't luxury because there's something taken away. Like for me, like luxury is using a beautiful product on your face, or it's like wearing something and feeling special in it. And if it's something that's kept away, for me, there's a disingenuousness. Of course, there's a customer who can buy lots of £1,000 shirts and can wear it every day and not worry about it.
That's not very interesting, is
it? But it's a personal relationship.
I think luxury is something kind of synonymous with sensuality and that feeling. And I think these garments do have that. And it's like you were saying about that, a feeling. And I think when you're thinking about a very luxurious piece of clothing, it's about putting it on and the feeling of it against your skin. And I don't see that so much in a garment that's sportswear based.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, because I think it's also about how people, I think fashion in general is also a tool that people use to express themselves. And so you might find this perfect trouser, this perfect jumper that you're like, oh my God, that tells the world, subconsciously, tells the world something about myself, or projects something that I want to project. And I think finding those things that when they really fit, there's a luxury in that experience, I think, of kind of
identifying something with yourself.
Yeah.
There's a poetry really in
exactly. Yeah.
So I guess it's adding to your personal narrative.
And it could be a cheap
whether your personal narrative is like a Fred Perry jumper, you know, in the north somewhere, or it's, you know, at the screening of Pirates of the Caribbean 6. And I tease, but because I really like Haider, and I would probably wear Haider a lot more if it was half the price. But again, you know, and it's just that I don't think it's about luxury, because I love Dries as well, and Dries has a very accessible price point for men's designer clothing, and I think there's a similarity, you know, with all the broderie anglais, not the broderie, the broderie, all the bullion embroidery that he does with the metal embroidery, and all his textiles in general, and his prints. And I think there's a similar man in that a lot of times. But you can get, you know, a beautiful cashmere coat that's covered in gold embroidery from Dries for £1,200, and a similar variation from Haider is going to be $3,000 or something like that. So even if I preferred the Haider one, it's like, okay, well, if it's a little less expensive, I'm going to enjoy that luxury more.
What was the question again?
Is fashion luxury?
Is fashion luxury?
Big question.
No. I don't think fashion's luxury. Fashion's absolutely everywhere. And like we said, it's, you know, it's how you're responding to a garment emotionally and what you're wanting to project, and that feeling of luxury. And that's everywhere for anyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think though if you take the luxury aspect out of fashion, then we go into a Star Trek universe where we're just like, purely utilitarian. I think, you know, flowers are everywhere as well, and we all appreciate them, but when you cut them and put them in a vase, they become a luxury consumption. And I think it's the same, for me, it's the same way in terms of like, when you start putting concepts and artistry into clothing, it then goes beyond its utilitarian purposes and starts approaching fashion.
Definitely.
I mean, speaking about kind of the utilitarian thing, I'm reminded of the recent Prada show, which is kind of all about utility and that, takes the idea of uniform and then turns it into a luxury idea.
There was one off-white look that actually looked quite similar. Did you notice
I
that?
wouldn't be surprised.
I didn't like the Prada show, the recent one, and there's always something I'd like in most collections. I can be like that. Yeah, I'd wear that piece like last season or autumn winters. That the Intarsia jumpers that I thought were really beautiful, but I'm not a big fan of wool jumpers because I find them too not utilitarian enough. Because we're all in climate control anyway, so you only actually can benefit from the heat of a wool jumper when you're outside in the cold.
Not wearing a coat.
Yeah, not wearing a coat. Yeah, so I mostly buy cotton jumpers like as a rule because I can wear them everywhere. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Prada show just because of its utilitarian aspects.
No, I wasn't a fan either, but I suppose more because it was felt just like another one of these shows where people are just kind of doing a greatest hits collection. And it's just, I feel like at the moment people are quite seriously running out of ideas.
BOF wrote a big article, Alessandro, the angry one.
Oh yeah. he hates London in general.
But he had a really interesting piece on Italy about how, because a lot of these big guys like Gucci have now moved their menswear to their womenswear calendar to co-edit. So there's a lot of space for these new guys, but they were still squished by the Prada doing a pre-interview with the journalists and things like this.
Right.
But he was saying actually a lot of the big guys in Milan are just rehashing their ideas and like what you were saying about Paris as well.
I quite like that they did that. I quite like when a brand goes back and kind of celebrates something great they did. That print, what was it? When was it? Was it 2014 or something? The menswear one, which the painted shirts, they were quite romantic.
Okay.
And the fire and stuff like that.
And they were all mashed together.
They were all mashed together, and I've actually really liked it.
I'm with you, I enjoyed that too.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to watch and felt like a column.
But is referencing something from 2014 enough of a throwback?
But
maybe for some consumers.
It was for me. I felt there's one piece where they've done, it's like a vest that's a laptop case. Remember that? And I'm well into that. 2018 utility. I think it's smart. It's clever. And it's
I
not
think
referencing military or anything.
But it is, it's the new armour.
There you go. Yeah. Exactly.
Carrying your screen on your chest. Need of information.
I think people will be absolutely desperate to buy this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that, I know so many people who cherish Prada Sport and have always enjoyed the nylons, and to kind of just say, you know what, this is what you want, here it is, is, certainly a commercially, seems like it'd be very viable.
But is there as much artistry in this collection?
No, not at all.
Because that's what
it's
she's
honest
always.
about it, what it's doing though, at least. It's again, it's authentic. It's like this, like you said, you want this, here you go.
I think what was quite funny about this is seeing this collection, I could just imagine people running to eBay and looking for the old collections.
Right.
I feel like it was really fun. It was an advertising thing.
That bloody shirt I want.
Yeah.
It's like £900. Buy it now.
So I guess dropping back into Haider Ackermann and this idea of Haider kind of sitting apart from some of those types of collections. One idea that I found in the interview he did with Tilda Swinton, which is a really nice piece of just two people who obviously really love and respect each other. It's just
sweet.
really sweet. Yeah, exactly. And they talk about this idea that the ultimate luxury is time. And certainly I see Haider as a kind of patient designer, not somebody who's kind of in the world of Instagram, social media, speedy design. is that the ultimate luxury? It's certainly in his clothes. This kind of loungy idea is very much about kind of resting and kind of spending time.
I mean, for us, time is the ultimate luxury. I mean, we've sort of built our business around that. I mean, all of our staff, we try and make sure they work. Most days they work 10 to 6. We try not to have them work weekends. That way, we can also, because originally we were based in Matthew's parents' house when we launched the business. So it's like all our staff had to leave by the time folks got home so we could all have dinner. Now we have a live-work studio on Old Street, and it's still, we kind of want to have people gone by the time dinners, we want to have dinner. We also want to like take up hobbies, and we want our staff to do hobbies.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about, I mean, I do think it's the ultimate luxury, but I think it's also just should be a priority in life. Like we live in a world where money is just the rule of everything, and there's an article.
You should work to live, not live to work.
Yeah, like Tory Burch was like, I don't know, made $1 billion, and like, oh, but in 2 years she's aiming to make $4 billion. It's like, why? That's not.
Well, that's a very New York thing.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, I mean, we built our business sort of on, like, I mean, we don't know Dries, but we've always respected what we've read about his business model and how he has had numerous like investment opportunities, and he's just like, I'm happy with the amount of money I have.
Yes.
He could easily expand his distribution, but he doesn't because he's happy like with the workload that he has and the lifestyle he has. He does 4 collections a year, and you know what, that's good for him.
I think that's exactly what I really respect about Haider, even if I'm not always gelling with the kind of aesthetic or styling, is that his perspective is someone who's very convinced about who his customer is and what he's doing, and he's quite happy focused on that. And I think at the moment we seem to be celebrating designers who are really commercially savvy and who can sell this and sell out this and get into as many stores as possible, and we're not really celebrating people who just have kind of creative conviction. And it seems very much a kind of sign of the times that we're living in, that we're kind of celebrating these kind of large windfall collections, and it feels a bit sad.
But isn't that temporary as well? Because again, going back to Dries, like Dries is relatively consistent. I think Dries and Haider actually are very similar brands in a lot of respects, but it's consistently good. Sometimes it's like, oh my god, one of the shows of the season, but not. It's never really like a massive trend. And what you have is like a lot of, especially younger designers, when they really quickly blow up, and it's much more of a moment. It's harder to have that like kind of always in the background, some always good.
But I think there are young designers who are very, I think of Kiko Kostadanov is somebody who I've seen from his St. Martin's collection through to the last one, which was just a phenomenal show. I loved it. Someone who's just very patient and considered about what he's doing and not really interested in engaging in the world in the same way as a lot of other designers are.
It's an interesting comparison with Kiko, because he just showed his women's wear collection, and he said that he wanted to really take his time to work out what that meant and work out what his woman was. And Haider did the same thing, obviously, when he showed men's.
Right.
So maybe the real success is waiting.
You have the downfall of that, which goes to Ada Thorpe. Because then it's like, I want to be really patient. I will release one skull bag every 3 years. It won't even be for sale. Come to my show and everyone applaud me. And then he just sells his illustrations because he's a beautiful illustrator. So there is a danger in taking things slow, because you do have to move at the speed of the industry that you're in.
You just have to, if you find people who find their own way, I think there's a real value to that. And even if you, especially as a young business, even if you're not there in this moment, that's where you're aiming to be. I think that's a really valuable goal for everyone to have, rather than kind of like, how rich can I be?
Well, I think we're in a very kind of narcissistic moment where I think a lot of young designers feel like their goal is not really some kind of internal feeling that they're just dying to express to the world, but actually to just have a brand and be a face and win awards and go to the right parties and have the right people at your shows.
I think it's hard with young designers and time, because time to me in menswear is tailoring. And when you're a new brand, it's so hard to find that tailor where you're like, that's it, that's my silhouette, that's my pocket, that's everything, you know, my lapel. I think that's the thing. And that's thinking, going back to the show and time, all of the tailoring definitely has that. And it's totally luxury
And that's reflected
and necessary, but
in
not
what too.
always.
I think this collection, this man looks like someone who has the time to take time. He doesn't look like someone who's rushing around.
But also these designers who are a bit more aware of it's kind of cliche, but a lot of their clothes are more timeless as well, rather than kind of like a logo. I mean, although he's got his logos on here, it seems, but the logo-driven things or things that are too kind of trend-driven, when people are kind of like toiling away at their own aesthetic and working out, you know, or they're not really as influenced maybe by what's going on around them. I think that's a bit more engaging sometimes, that it's kind of like, he's like, I mean, I mean, this collection, I think there are some sportswear references, so he's a bit aware. But like the kimono pajama look, that's something that's really just him, and he's toiling away and he's working out for himself. And it's kind of like a painter kind of developing those early paintings to get to the perfect one. Like he's not
like
quite there
going
yet.
back to Gautier and all his constant nautical references.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to find the perfect way of subverting this reference to make it right for me and not just a literal translation.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps we should just dig in a bit to Berluti, which has been, I think, very well received. We had Dahl doing a kind of best in show about Berluti, and this to me is just gorgeous. I love it. It's really kind of exactly what I want to see from Haider, and I think what's interesting about it is that Haider's gone to do menswear, is now really committed to menswear, and I kind of wanted to probe a bit why that might be, why he's not, you know, spending time on a women's wear label, and just talk about menswear as a very kind of growing industry. I think it's sort of 40% of the fashion market.
Well, I mean, for me, I think there's just so few options for variety in menswear. I mean, you have your sportswear aesthetic, you have your like Ralph Lauren-esques, you know, and then you have, I guess, that your Rick Owen Rick Owen wannabes sort of thing. And so it's nice when someone can offer a different aesthetic. I think this for me is very much a toned down Haider. But it means it appeals to more people.
I think he's cracked the timeless thing with this collection. It could be from any season, really, and I think people buying into this will wear each piece with a variety of different other designers. These garments are designed, I think, to be garments, not looks, whereas the Haider Ackermann show, it's looks. They're styled as looks.
Yeah, because I can see people, I actually can't necessarily see a lot of the Haider men wearing this. Like, I wouldn't wear it necessarily. I like it, I appreciate it, but to me, it doesn't have enough distinctiveness when it's taken apart.
It looks like, I mean, it sounds dumb, but it looks like menswear.
Yeah.
This is what men wear, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it could be Hermes.
But I think Dal said something quite interesting in the Best in Show that we're all talking about.
Plug.
Watch it. But Dal was explaining that what Haider's doing here as well is that he already knows that he doesn't have to create something new for the Berluti customer. He's already working with that person and who they are, and they're someone who doesn't need to be told what's good and what they have to wear. And you can definitely see that.
Oh, completely. And I think even just in reappropriating it in the Haider sort of jewel tone, but like a more subdued jewel tone that I think he uses, I think is a nice way of approaching that customer.
I feel there's a correlation between the two shows as well to me, in that he gets that kind of early 2000s tailoring silhouette so well. Like it's really beautiful, that look down there. The leather stuff and whatnot, and the stuff that just looks like day wear, to me, is really boring. But it's, you know, it's chic and it's flawless in this show, but it's still a bit boring.
I suppose Berluti is kind of an interesting brand. It's a very old brand. It's the kind of only solely menswear brand in the LVMH crown. I mean, you guys are menswear designers, but
women's wear.
Oh, you are women's wear designers.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking before about the shirting.
Yeah.
We used to do menswear as well years ago, but
It's just a difficult market with pricing and everything. And
Okay.
as a young brand, you find that, and this is probably with Palomo when we were discussing him earlier, you find that if you want to be creative as a young brand, it's really hard to find those price points for menswear
Right.
that men are happy to pay for.
Right.
And so then, you know, also if you go commercial to get those price points, that's not as fun as a designer. So women's wear actually, for us, provides a lot more creative freedom.
Right.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So yeah, as much as we would love to explore menswear maybe later on when we have a larger team, women's wear is just a lot more
Do you think that there could
fulfilling.
there could be something that could change that? Do you think that that's you know, you could, or the market is just,
well, no, the thing is,
men
it's
know
how,
what they wear,
how
they
men
know what they
have
don't.
drilled in. Like, I think we're all quite brand loyal. Like, you find something you like, and it's like,
Yeah.
I am that person,
Yeah.
and like you just like absorb it all. And it's really difficult to kind of like flip. I don't know many guys who flip from random brand to random brand. When I think a lot of women are kind of more open to trying. Oh, this looks really nice. I'm going to try this brand, try this here and there. Whereas men, you have to really convince them. Once you've convinced them, you've got them for life probably, unless you really fuck up. But getting them is like, I think that's the key. But also then if you get them and you disappoint them, like there's a young designer Levi recently bought, and I'd wanted one of his pieces for a while, but then got it and tried it and it's like, kind of killed the idea of maybe lost a customer there.
Yeah.
So do you think that relates back to the luxury feeling? Is that's how you're responding to a brand, or is it just sort of
It's an identity thing.
general masculine insecurity?
Maybe.
They're stopping young menswear designers from being more artistic or flamboyant.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's maybe the consumer's general masculine insecurities. Because I mean, when I see this, like I think this is how straight men should dress. Like it's it's still masculine enough to be like, okay, he's probably straight, but he looks really stylish.
Yeah, if I saw a straight man wearing anything, it's like,
But I think it comes back to, I think the menswear market's more difficult than women's wear market, because men in general are less secure with their own identities as a sex, I think. And so there's far fewer men who are willing to actually explore
A flourish.
or who they are and how to identify themselves. Because I mean, a lot of guys are going to be kind of like, oh, this celebrity's doing this, so then it's okay. I'm going to wear that because my
I mean,
friends
just
wear
think
it as
about
well.
pink and David Beckham. No men wore pink before.
It's really like that.
So like it was fine if you wore pink, you were obviously queer. And then David Beckham came along, and it's like, okay, we can do it now too.
Well, also going back to the kind of Palomo discussion, which is obviously about kind of selling women's wear on men, but has really taken off, like you were saying, because it was shown on a female celebrity. I suppose there's still a difficulty in really selling these kinds of garments to men who are not,
of course.
you know, clubbing and
Or just confident in their environments. Also, you have to think about the social aspect of it. So many people aren't fortunate enough to be able to work in a creative field that we do, where we have the liberties to dress however the hell we want. So you can be a luxury consumer and work for HSBC, or you know, but you can't go in there wearing any of this. Like you might be able to wear a trench coat on top of your Brooks Brothers suit, but you know, that's about it. Or maybe you have like a fancy little cup.
I mean, even in terms of event dressing as well, like men are much more, like there's more of a kind of event dressing is a bit more open for women, whereas men is kind of like, this is what you're kind of expected to wear.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at some of the fine dining experiences in London, and like, you know, you go, for instance, if you go book a table at the Ritz, it's like men must wear a tailored jacket, and it's like, okay, but if I showed up in this lovely dress from Palomo, and I was like, I'm really feeling,
I spent a lot of money on it. Well, you should let me in.
Like I look gorgeous, you know.
Let's contact them and get a couple of looks and go to the Ritz together.
Yeah, let's do. But it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar to like the double standards. I'm not talking. I don't want to bring in this whole conversation of like boohoo men. We aren't allowed anything, and you know, that sort of thing. But like, you know, it goes back to the smoking when who was it? Lula de la Falaise was wearing the smoking jacket as a dress, and was like, no, you can't wear that into these French restaurants because that's not a dress. And it's these ideas of social construct that I think really make the market what it is, unfortunately. I do think if everyone had the liberties of wearing whatever they wanted to as your bank teller or your sales staff at John Lewis, we would be more open. But I mean, I even remember back to like, I don't know if it's similar in the UK, but in the US, in Texas growing up, like if you had exposed tattoos or piercings as a guy up until really about 2005, it was really hard to get a job even in retail or anything. Like you'd be working in the stockroom, putting things up, because obviously you're too edgy for our consumers to have trust in our brand.
I think within the kind of gender thing with what Palomo does, it's interesting with everything that you're saying, because although they are feminine, his references are all, apart from the dress, dresses aside, they're so historical and they are masculine. You know, that is menswear.
Yeah,
it's just from
a certain period.
Yeah, it's from a certain period, and then what all the other shows we're looking at are completely contemporary and masculine, like the polar opposite. Like you probably could go to work
the cape.
Most of the other looks.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm touching on your kind of point about tattoos and the kind of practical realities of some of this style of dressing. I've been doing some documentary pieces about some friends of mine in New York, Shane Oliver and Telfar and Raul Lopez, and you know, there's been a lot of stories about how you know, some of the kind of outrageous ways of dressing were very, you know, deliberate kind of ways of expressing a place in the world and absolutely needing to be recognized. And it was a very kind of dangerous thing to be doing, really, in New York in the kind of early 2000s. But felt like a kind of necessary thing to parade around on the streets and be wearing, you know, feather electroclash hair and you know, a basketball jersey as a dress and kitten heels and just fucking with people because it was a kind of necessary part of expressing identity. So I guess part of me sees this as a very kind of valiant thing to be doing, to carve space out for people.
I think I was thinking about this last night. It's really interesting as well. I think it's like it's necessary, and like you were saying, in Texas with your job and with tattoos, it's necessary. It's sad, but it's necessary in America because you have to fucking fight. It's wearing. You have to fight. Whereas we're lucky here, where you don't necessarily have to as much. You know, and in Europe and in Paris, you don't have to fight for that.
Or at least in the capital cities, in our bubbles.
Well, now that I live in Camden, it's slightly easier, but I remember living with my mum in Colindale, and even wearing skinny jeans was like, you know, let your balls breathe. I always got that comment. It was great.
Yeah, you know, that's not important.
So you just cut a hole in the crotch.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, if I tried that, it might be a bit much. Okay, anything else, anyone?
We didn't touch on your arrogant hipster.
Oh, I guess we well, let's sum up then, I guess, with who is the Haider Ackermann man? And I suppose, is he, part of me thinks he's a bit of a kind of Italian hipster guy. Is he? Is he a cool guy?
I don't think he's necessarily an Italian hipster. I think the point is he's supposed to be well-traveled, modern dandy.
Okay, nice.
think
is that a cool guy?
I think I don't know if necessarily the look, the full thing is a cool thing to do.
But how do you
I think
define
buying
cool?
Into Haider, I think being conscious.
I think cool is a really important thing to define. It's become uncool to use the word cool now. I think cool. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
No, but cool. I think cool is a very important concept. I think in fashion, one that's kind of under-discussed. But
And rarely present in menswear.
yeah.
But isn't
And
it
actually,
quite...
this relates to me to a discussion we had at one point about how nobody dresses like musicians anymore.
Right, yeah.
People all dress like fashion people. They don't dress like musicians. And musicians. Oh God, I don't know if he's a musician. But musicians are cool.
But isn't cool completely subjective?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I think what we're again with musicians, we're talking about, you would never dress as a cowboy, whereas perhaps we're like, yeah. Is the musician thing and dressing like a musician, you're playing a character, you're playing a role.
It's theatre.
It's theatre, yeah, exactly.
But I mean, your comments on the kind of Haider Ackermann man being a bit Pirates of the Caribbean, like that's not cool. There's
No,
nothing
that's
cool
a
about it.
misunderstanding of character.
I think the idea of cool is about a certain element of confidence, and whether you...
being comfortable.
Yeah, and the idea of authenticity, like, does that person really believe it? And it's kind of like, there's something about the way, when you think about the extreme version of Haider and his Johnny Deppism, like, I don't really believe Johnny Depp in a way when he's wearing that outfit. There's something that's a bit too put on, and that's what makes it not cool. But I think
You should hear what you said about the way you dress.
But there's something about, I think there's elements of Haider's work that I think the customer who wears it, I agree that it's dandy, there's a romance to it, and I think there's going to be some people who wear it who are desperately not cool because they're overstyling it, overworking it, and it's not a believable thing. But I think there's going to be some people who are able to take it, and it genuinely works with them, and it's just...
Well, for example, Tilda Swinton always makes it look
desperately
incredible.
Cool, yeah, she's
But
amazing.
she's a fucking cool woman.
Yeah. But it's a confidence thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Or, I mean, other clients have been, I think Janet Jackson as well was in the front row at one point, which I loved.
But that outfit that we had on the screen that Tilda Swinton was wearing earlier on, you put that on like, I don't know, can't think of any other female celebrity. Someone else, it would just maybe just not completely work because like the the pink satin jacket, the copper satin trousers on someone else might be like, what are you going for? You're like this metallic robot woman.
He said, isn't it? He said that he only wants to respond to the person. He's not interested in dressing celebrities. And if they have that understanding and that connection, then the person wearing the clothes will really understand them.
Yeah. And I think he said, like, I wouldn't want to dress anyone I don't really know. Like, so, obviously it's got a very strong relationship with Tilda Swinton. I think even Kanye and Kim were, like, at one point flirting with Haider a lot. And Kanye was, like, wearing a lot of the kind of sweats and stuff like that. And they developed a bit of a relationship.
Were they dating?
Were they? Oh, my goodness. That's another panel. I want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So tune in next week for
more SHOWstudio.
No.
Did you want to say something more?
No, I wanted to ask.
Go on.
Maybe is Haider Ackermann cool only if you're cool enough for Haider Ackermann?
Ooh, that's a good.
Look at that.
That's a good way of putting it.
And that is officially how we're ending today's panel. Thanks for tuning in. Come back soon, all that. Thank you, everyone.